Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly massive shift happening right now in the enterprise IT landscape. And honestly, the absolute best way to understand an infrastructure change of this magnitude is to look at it like the dissolution of a 26-year relationship. We're looking at the anatomy of a breakup, specifically a massive enterprise client walking away from an industry-standard hypervisor. It's a huge deal. This isn't just about migrating some data from point A to point B. It's about untangling literally decades of habits, loyalties, and complex infrastructure. So let's look at how a breakup of this scale actually happens.
Okay, let's dive into this. 1998. That is the year this particular client first started using VMware. I mean, just think about that for a second. We're talking about a tech relationship that started when a lot of the folks currently managing these very systems were probably still in grade school. This wasn't some tiny weekend test lab. They basically grew up together. And when an organization runs on a single platform for that long, it creates this deep institutional muscle memory. You know how it is? The admins learn every single little quirk, the third-party vendors bless the setup, and entirely massive operational ecosystems are built strictly around it.
Section 1. The 26-year breakup, when muscle memory meets the renewal window. Now, what actually happens when all that warm, fuzzy sentiment collides with harsh budget realities? Well, to be clear, this breakup was absolutely not a sudden rage quit. No, it was a highly calculated departure forced by a very specific event. Their licenses expire in September of 2026, and they decided, nope, we're not renewing, following what was described as a frankly staggering price hike. When the numbers change that drastically overnight, long-standing operational habits inevitably lose out to the reality of the balance sheet. It stopped feeling like a standard software renewal, right? And it started feeling a lot more like a hostage negotiation.
Section 2. When trust becomes strategic risk. The cost of a financially hostile platform.
Because, this really isn't just about the invoice. I want to anchor this entire shift with a direct quote from an anonymous admin who's actually in the trenches of this migration. They said, "We didn't leave because vSphere stopped working. We left because the deal stopped making sense." And wow, that is the brutal reality of the situation right there. The source material makes it super clear. VMware is still a technically brilliant, highly polished product. The platform didn't fail them on a technical level. But when a platform that has literally run your entire environment for decades suddenly feels financially hostile, the trust just completely evaporates. Familiarity simply cannot survive when your core infrastructure stack starts acting like a luxury tax. Suddenly, every minor technical flaw gets magnified, and what used to be your most reliable tool morphs into a major strategic business risk.
Section 3. The pragmatic rebound. Proxmox, Ceph, and the Hyper-V reality.
So where do you even go after a 26-year relationship ends? Well, after running a bunch of extensive proof of concepts and grinding through the cost comparisons, this client ultimately landed on Proxmox VE paired up with Ceph for their storage. Now, what's really interesting about this is that they aren't just swapping one logo out for another. VMware offered what we'd call comfort and polish. Proxmox with Ceph, on the other hand, it demands control and homework. Ceph is incredibly powerful, and it's brutally effective at scale, but you've got to have strict discipline. Your hardware choices matter, your network design really matters, your failure domains and your monitoring setup are absolutely crucial. A poorly designed Ceph implementation can take your brilliant cost-saving migration and turn it into a slow-motion disaster. Basically, they're trading the easy comfort of their old vendor for a stack where ownership and responsibility shift very heavily back onto the admin team.
But hey, let's be real. Enterprise IT is rarely a clean break, is it? While Proxmox won the primary bid here, Hyper-V definitely did not disappear from the picture. The survival mantra for this migration became, run Proxmox where you can and run Hyper-V where you must. Why is that? Simply because certain application vendors actually hold veto power over your migration. If a critical vendor says they only officially support VMware or Hyper-V, well, you're pretty much forced to land those specific workloads on Hyper-V. It's the messy, unavoidable reality of enterprise infrastructure. Your final design isn't just dictated by what's architecturally best, it's often dictated by those depressing little footnotes buried deep inside a vendor's support documentation.
Section 4. The 10,000 VM factory. Migration at scale is not a wizard. 10,000 virtual machines. Just let that scale sink in for a second. At this level, you are not just clicking an import wizard and wandering off to grab a cup of coffee. No way. The sheer terrifying weight of 10,000 VMs completely changes the conversation. A migration of this size isn't an IT task. It is a highly orchestrated factory. We're talking meticulously planned batches, strict rollback windows, coordinating with a small army of application owners, non-stop testing scripts, and obsessive network mapping. You need a team that can stay ice cold and absolutely calm under an immense amount of pressure.
So, realistically, how fast can you actually move them? The source material highlights a comment suggesting that using backup and restore workflows, you might be able to handle around 1,500 to 2,000 VMs in a single week, which, sounds highly efficient, right? But there is a massive catch here. That kind of throughput is only going to happen if your backup infrastructure, your network pipes, and your storage I/O can actually take that level of punishment without melting down. The bottleneck in a migration like this isn't always the hypervisor itself. Sometimes it's literally just the physical limits of your data pipes and, frankly, your team's patience.
Hey, even if the pipes hold up perfectly, you still have to survive the traps. There are at least 5 things quietly waiting in the dark to ruin an admin's entire month during a migration of this size. Get ready for it. Legacy appliances, ancient operating systems that haven't been patched in a decade, static MAC addresses, physical licensing dongles, yeah, those are still a thing, and hard-coded IPs. When you move 10,000 workloads, the 637th VM is inevitably going to behave completely differently from the first 636. This right here is exactly where the pristine planning spreadsheets violently collide with the messy reality of decades of IT accumulation.
Section 5. The vSAN Trapdoor. Conference room optimism versus real execution. And this brilliantly illustrates why you just can't rely on high-level assumptions. The source outlines a very specific, nasty little warning regarding vSAN, which is VMware's software-defined storage. If your source environment is sitting on vSAN, you can't just casually run the standard Proxmox ESXi import wizard. Turns out the Proxmox PV fuse wrapper might not actually be able to talk to it in that specific model. So the data has to be manually moved off vSAN first, over to something the wrapper can actually communicate with. It's literally the perfect example of how a migration plan can look absolutely flawless in a conference room spreadsheet and then completely faceplant during the very first serious import wave because an underlying storage layout was glossed over.
Section 6. The new IT reality. The default has cracked.
So, what does this specific client's massive departure mean for the broader infrastructure industry? Well, the crucial point is this. While it is genuinely sad to leave a platform that has shaped careers, trained thousands of admins, and stabilized data centers for a quarter of a century, this forced migration is also an incredible opportunity. The real winners in this new reality aren't just swapping one hypervisor for another. They're using this exact moment to enforce much healthier data center hygiene. They are finally properly documenting their environments, they're cleaning out decades-old zombie workloads that nobody owns anymore, they're rethinking their entire storage architectures with modern tools like Ceph, and, most importantly, they are building the exit paths they really should have had in place years ago.
The market has fundamentally changed, folks. Customers are now totally willing to test alternatives and accept mixed platform designs as long as it keeps their business moving forward safely and economically. Which leaves us with one final critical question for anyone managing enterprise infrastructure today. Is your loyalty to a logo or to leverage? Because at the end of the day, the platform that ultimately wins is the one that delivers the capability you need without making your next renewal meeting feel like a threat. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a powerful new lens to evaluate your own infrastructure relationships. Catch you next time.